Verlin is going to go through logistically what we've done differently in the last few months as far as how we ship units. And we have some exciting news is because in the crate behind you, we have a KarKaddy SS that we're actually going to set up for you today. The neat thing is that we've done a lot of the setup for you, and we'll show you that here in just a minute. For the sake of focusing on the assembly of the dolly, we can kind of go over to the crate. We have taken the screws out of the top of the unit and we've loosened up the front. So I just want you aware of that. So shall we get into it?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do it. Let's just go to work. Let's have some fun.
As Brad mentioned, we've made a lot of changes to our tow dollies and how we ship them. Previously, we had shipped our tow dollies in a box state where there was quite a bit of assembly that had to be done, or we shipped them in a fully assembled state. But in a fully assembled state, obviously, as you probably saw the tow dolly earlier on the camera that we do have assembled here, those are hard to ship on an LTL truck. So what we've done is kind of did a hybrid version where the tow dolly is mostly assembled, and we'll show you what assembly is left here as we take some things out of the crate. So the dolly comes in the crate, the fenders, the wheels, the ramps, everything is installed on the dolly. The only thing that we have to install on the dolly is the tongue. So that is what we are going to take out of the crate at this time. And I'm going to assist Brad bringing that around to the front. All right. So as Brad mentioned, our focus today is really on the assembly of the dolly. We have already kind of opened the crate up. We don't want the focus on how to get the crate open. We want the focus on how to do the dolly. So this is a wood crate, as Brad mentioned. There's some screws on the top that hold it together. It is screwed and nailed together. So how we suggest doing this is taking the crate apart and taking the front side off so that you've got the front of the tow dolly exposed. And I'll go into a little bit more explanation on that. So these two supports, there's two screws that hold those. You just remove those screws and get those supports out of the way. So what we suggest doing then is you've got the whole front of the dolly exposed. There are two 2x4s here that we've already removed to access the dolly easier. Then what we're going to do is take a crowbar, and between Brad and I, we're just going to gently move this tow dolly ahead just enough so that the front of the frame here is off the pallet and exposed to make the tongue assembly quite easy. So, yep. Okay. Yep. So for the initial assembly, it's nice to have an extra hand. And basically all we did is just rolled the dolly just forward enough out of the crate. And now we're going to place the tongue on the dolly. So as we move in, all of these assembly instructions are going to be in the instruction with the tow dolly. And you'll see we remove the bracing struts in the tongue. And then also right behind you, Brad, if you want to grab that out. We cut the zip ties, but zip tied to the dolly is going to be the nuts and bolts that you need to bolt the tongue on, as well as the instruction manual. So what Brad is doing is he's grabbing out the large bolt that's going to go in to attach the tongue to the mainframe there. He's also dumping out the bolts that bolt on the bracing struts. So What our instructions will tell you to do is to stay about 3 inches back from the latch assembly itself. So in other words, we're keeping the tongue about 3 inches forward. So I'm gonna lift the tongue up. Okay. Yep. So as you can see, we're using the tongue jack to hold the opposite end of the tongue up. Okay. And what we have is a C-clamp to clamp the tongue in place. And we're just raising the jack on the dolly to get the tongue into place. Okay. Now what Brad is doing is just clamping the tongue to the main frame of the dolly with just a standard C-clamp that you'll have in your shop. And what Brad's going to be doing next is attaching our electrical connection and our brake connection. So what I'm going to show you, this is the front half of the wiring harness. It comes out of the tongue here on the dolly, runs all the way down to the point where Brad is. It's just a standard 4-flat electrical connection at the coupler end, and it's 4 bullet points at the attaching end down there. This is the what we call the rear half of the wire harness. This comes and runs down the frame of the dolly to the passenger side and to the driver's side. You will not have to install these. They're already installed. The only reason I have them is just to show you what Brad is doing. This 4-flat connection is underneath the tongue, right where Brad is. It's all tucked in out of the way to protect that electrical connection from any road debris or anything like that. So that's what Brad's doing. Everything is color coded, you'll see. These two go up. These two will come out and go up to the license plate bracket. They will already be connected. So what you'll want to do is connect your colors by the colors that are here. So you want to put the green to the green. That's what Brad is doing right now. The yellow to the yellow. And they're just a push-on bullet connector. The brown to the brown. Probably my fingers are all in the way here, but everything is color coded. Makes it easy. And you don't want to cross any of the colors because you may have the turn signals wrong then. And the white to the white on the very end. So this is what that electrical connection looks like underneath the dolly. So what Brad is doing next is the brake system. All of our dollies come with hydraulic surge brakes and disc brakes, and the braking system is already pre-charged and pre-bled. So there's no having to add brake fluid, no having to bleed the brakes. And so question you probably have is, how do we accomplish that? So what I've got here is our braking connection that Brad is hooking up underneath right now. I'm going to take my gloves off here a minute to show you. So the system is all bled. There's a valve. This is on the dolly side. There's a valve here that is keeping all the fluid in on the dolly side. This is on the tongue side. And there's also a valve in here that's keeping the fluid in on the tongue side. So what you do is you slide those two connections together like this. And with a 9/16" wrench, you can hold this side and you push, and that fitting will snap together. So I'll show you again. This fitting is slid back, the valve is closed, and you just slide it together. When the sleeve snaps forward, the connection is made. So again, no need to bleed the brakes We've got the valves in the connection. As you snap them together, the hydraulic fluid will flow. So Brad's got the braking connection together. And you'll see that we need very few tools to do this. What he has right now is a 15/16 inch socket and a 15/16 inch wrench, open end box end wrench.
This
Yep, just kind of an alignment tool as we slide this back. So he's going to need just a little bit of assistance from me as we slide this back. So what we did is effectively left the tongue about 3 inches forward. That allows us a gap in there to connect up the electrical connection and the braking connection. Now we've just pushed the tongue back, and Brad is inserting the bolt that attaches the tongue to the main frame of the dolly. One of the things that you'll want to watch when you do this, as you insert that bolt, one of the things that Brad is doing is he's making sure, okay, he's making sure that as he inserts the bolt that we are not catching either the electrical connection or the hydraulic brake connection. We'll want both the electrical line and the hydraulic line for the disc brakes to go above the bolts. So he's just pushing those two connections up, and he's inserting the bolt. So what I'm doing here is just moving the tongue back and forth just a little bit to help get that hole alignment for that bolt to go through. Now what Brad has is a punch just to kind of help line up that hole a little bit. See the bolt through on the other side. I'm going to quick put a nut on it here. All right. Now the bolt in the tongue, you'll see in our instructions advises 50 foot-pounds of torque. The reason for that is the unit has to tilt for loading and unloading a car. So we are going to just apply 50 pounds of torque on that bolt. The SS stands for space saver. So I'll explain a little bit about what Brad is doing next here. He is getting ready to put on the bracing struts. There are two bracing struts that run from this point here to the outer ends of the axle. So there is what we call a nut block that goes in on each side of the tongue. Line is in there, Brad. Going to have the larger hole to the rear. So you'll see in the bracing struts there is a small hole and a large hole. So the larger hole end has to go towards the axle on the dolly. And again, you'll see I'll bring this up close to the camera. There's a large end and then the smaller end. The smaller end goes towards the front of the dolly. And the reason for that is there's a bushing that goes back on this side that allows that deck to tilt. This side stays stationary. And then the epoxy bolt goes on to the nut strip that we inserted into the tongue. And we're going to loose fit all of this first to get both ends all attached. And then after that, we will tighten everything up and torque it according to our instructions. But we're going to loose fit everything in the beginning here. So Brad's finishing up the tightening of the bolts. Basically what he's doing is this bracing strut. There's a bolt back here attaching it to the axle, and of course the bolt attaching it to the tongue. And he's just finishing up tightening those up. So Brad has got his torque wrench here. Basically what we're doing is we're torquing 75 foot-pounds on the rear two bolts and 100 foot-pounds on the front two bolts. And as I mentioned earlier, 50 foot-pounds on the center bolt there on the tongue.
For the most part, this dolly is done and ready to roll. You know, we'd recommend just take the backside of the crate off, extend your ramps down, and you should just roll it off.
Yep.
So I've got a couple of bolts to finish torquing, but other than that, it's done.